So in the introduction to Laudato Si, paragraph 13 and 14 is his appeal. And it just summarizes in those two introductory paragraphs of the whole encyclical, why should we do this? Why should we care for our common home? And specifically today, why should we have sustainable fish fries? So, quote, "The urgent challenge to protect our common home includes a concern to bring the whole human family together to seek a sustainable and integral development, for we know that things can change. The Creator does not abandon us. He never forsakes his loving plan or repents of having created us. Humanity still has the ability to work together in building our common home. Here I want to recognize, encourage, and thank all those striving in countless ways to guarantee the protection of the home which we share. Particular appreciation is owed to those who tirelessly seek to resolve the tragic effects of environmental degradation on the lives of the world's poorest. Young people demand change. They wonder how anyone can claim to be building a better future without thinking of the environmental crisis and sufferings of the excluded." Good sentence right there. Continuing in paragraph 14. "I urgently appeal then for a new dialogue about how we are shaping the future of our planet. We need a conversation which includes everyone, since the environmental challenge we are undergoing and its human roots concern and affect us all. The worldwide ecological movement has already made considerable progress and led to the establishment of numerous organizations committed to raising awareness of these challenges. Regrettably, many efforts to seek concrete solutions to the environmental crisis have proved ineffective, not only because of powerful opposition, but also because of more general lack of interest. Obstructionist attitudes, even on the part of believers, can range from denial of the problem to indifference, nonchalant resignation, or blind confidence in technical solutions. We require a new and universal solidarity, as the bishops of Southern Africa have stated. Everyone's talents and involvement are needed to redress the damage caused by human abuse of God's creation. All of us can cooperate as instruments of God for the care of creation, each according to his or her own culture, experience, involvements, and talents." So emphasizing a couple of concepts of why should we do this. That this creation is God's gift to us. Caring for this creation then is an integral part of our faith response to God's love. Why should we do that? Because God loves us and we want to respond to that. We also heard that it's for the future generations too, not just the present, but what are we leaving to the future generations? And we can go through and talk about Catholic social teaching. Well, care of creation is part of Catholic social teaching. It's for the common good. It's for the good of all of us. And it's in solidarity with all those who work here on earth, that live here on earth. So I have all kinds of stuff, but I think those two paragraphs from the encyclical itself really summarizes why should we do this? That it's all God's gift, and we are responding to this gift. We want to care for this gift that God has given us. So.
And this is Maggie McCoy, everybody, and I would like you to, I didn't even ask their bio. So yes, a wealth of knowledge, which we're Hannibal Garden, and I will let her speak off about her university minute. You're very tough this morning. That's fine. So thanks for having me halfway, and my name is Maggie McCoy, we're Missouri Botanical Garden, Text Farm, Climate Change Education Coordinator. So a lot of what you is work with thought leaders, teachers, small academic sustainability projects. A lot of my work on my part used to focus on waste reduction projects, specifically students from the especially projects, city schools, and then end up being able to take action on that and reduce waste within their own schools. We have some other staff members who do that now, but also focusing on some of these issues related to climate. Also on sort of like the how do you manage waste at a large event front? I'm also part of our team that works at the garden on our major events like Japanese Festival, Best of Missouri Market, which happened just a week ago, on our team that helps sort recycling, compost, and landfill. So a lot of my job is digging through trash, honestly. So this is a topic that I feel very at home at. Thinking about trash and how do we think about what our impact is. Well, hopefully this is going to be my friend today. If not, that's okay. And click this here. So if people are not familiar with Missouri Botanical Garden, which I think, has everyone here been to the garden, Botanical Garden? Okay, I see hands, perfect. So our mission, what? Yes, oh, perfect, excellent. And it's reusable, which is great because we're going to be talking about that later. So our mission at the garden is to discover and share knowledge about plants and their environment in order to preserve and enrich life. I work for a part of the garden called the Earth Waste Center, which is our sustainability division. And we really think about how we fit into the garden is we think about how to make sure there's clean air, clean water, and clean soil for plants and people. Not just in St. Louis, but all around the world. So all the work we do is sort of driven to creating that environment that's both healthy for plants and people, which really fits in with what we were just talking about moments ago with the Pope's encyclical. And so we work a lot with businesses, communities. My part is working with schools. We do a lot with planting native plants that help absorb stormwater, looking at how to create more energy efficient homes, especially in low income homes, thinking about how we work with businesses that can become more green. So there's a lot of different components of this, but we do a lot of this work out in the community. Right now, there's between 20 and 25 of us on this team that pretty much exclusively work on sustainability within the community. So just, if you're not familiar with us, it's a little bit more about what we do. And I am going to pose a question to you, and it's not to shame anybody today, so I just want to say that up front, but I think it's just framing this whole conversation when we think about waste and fish fries. And it's not a question I made up. It's one I heard from somebody else who thinks about waste in schools, but is really thinking about, if you are not for zero waste, how much waste are you for? So if you're not for zero waste, how much waste are you for? And I really think the point of that question is to challenge us to think about the stuff that we're bringing into our churches, our communities, our parishes. We're paying for that, right? Not only in terms of its impact on the environment, but with our own dollars, which many of us are trying to use these fish fries as fundraisers, right? We're using it for a second, and then we're paying to have it taken somewhere else, where it might not be having a good impact on the environment. So really thinking about the stuff that we use every day, how do we think about its impact and how do we get the greatest use out of it before it heads right back out the door again, right? And really starting to think of these material as resources as opposed to thinking about them as waste. So again, this is just a backdrop, not to shame anybody who's ever thrown anything away. We all live in a society that does this, but challenging us to think about how we're really thinking about our stuff and our materials. And with that, I also think this really feeds into how we think about sustainability in general, which is, if you're not familiar with the term sustainability, people use it in a bunch of different ways. I will use it a lot today, and so I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. We really at the Garden think about this, what we call triple bottom line, which is this idea that sustainable decisions and choices really are at the intersection of where we're satisfying the needs of the environment, satisfying the needs of people, but also thinking about economic impact. So when we think about fish fries, right, especially within the context of Laudato Si, we're really thinking about what is the impact of that fish fry on our environment. How is it supporting or harming people, in the case of maybe eating off of styrofoam or some of these other things that we're going to talk about. But also what is the economic impact on our fish fries of paying for all this stuff to come in, paying for it to be thrown away, and thinking about, how do we want to use our dollars to support people and the environment, right? So all three of these things kind of come together when we're thinking about things within the context of fish fries. And I will say that every parish is going to be different. So I'm going to throw out some ideas today. We're going to talk about some things. There's no one way to do this. Everyone's situation is going to be different. Everyone's bringing different resources. And it's really thinking about what is that balance for your individual situation within the context of those resources and your goals. Okay. The other way I like to think about this, and man, this came up in that encyclical too. So we're like all hitting on it, right? Is the United Nations put out sort of like this idea about sustainable development in 1987 as part of the Brundtland Report, which really said that sustainable development is development that meets the needs of current generations, while also while not compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So when I think about this, and we were talking about future generations, I think about is what we're doing with our waste systems right now working for us? Is it working for people? Is it working for the planet? And you can reflect on your own, and people's answers might vary a little bit. And then I like to think about, okay, in 100 years, right? We're in the future, we're thinking about what are our waste systems going to look like? Do we really want them to look like the way they are today? And if our answer is no, we have to start thinking about what are the steps we can take to move ourselves to that future that we really dream of, that might be more healthful, that might be better for the environment, that might be more balanced with our own morality and ethics, right? And so we have to start thinking about what are those ways we can start moving ourselves to that future that we want. So that's all kind of within the context and the backdrop of what we're talking about today. And again, there's a ton of different ways to do this. It can be really overwhelming sometimes. I think Jamie and I have had this conversation about like this whole dream list of things that we could do, right? But like we gotta focus on one at a time, right? Because that's how we're really gonna make some momentum on this. So today we're focusing on fish fries, right? And so I think that's a great place to start. I think it's one of the ways that we really show community and come together, especially within Catholic churches. I'm at the college church personally. I know we don't host a fish fry, but lots of events there. But then also thinking about this is how a lot of people outside in the community who may not be part of Catholic communities interact with parishes. And so thinking about what does that mean in terms of how we're bringing community together and our impact and the choices that we're making. So again, I think fish fries are a good place to start. And what is the problem, right? So when we think about waste, one of the things that we look at is sort of like, what are we throwing away here in the United States? So the last year that the EPA has good numbers for is 2018. But when we look at what we threw away in 2018, we throw away about 292.4 million tons of waste here in the United States. Now that does include like recycling and composting and landfill. So it's all of those streams, which comes out to about 5 pounds of waste per person per day. And when we look at what the breakdown of that waste is, we can see about a quarter of it is going to be paper and paperboard. About 12.5% is going to be plastics, which is again sort of that niche that we might be talking about today. And then another 21.5% is going to be food. Okay, so that's out of the total things that we throw away. We recycle and compost about a third of that here in the United States, and the rest of it's going to end up going to landfill. So when we think about what actually goes to the landfill, those percentages are a little bit different because remember, we've sort of filtered out that stuff that we've recycled and composted. When we look at what goes into the landfill, 18.5% is going to be plastics. Okay, but a whopping 24% of what we send to the landfill, making it the single largest category of waste we send to landfill, is food. So when we think about the impact, especially of how we think about food on our landfills and on our waste stream, that food and plastics alone is going to account for close to 45% of what is going to our landfills. So when we think about what is our impact, when we think about how we serve food, we have a huge amount of capacity here to make a difference in these numbers.
So I think it's important to put that in context as well, is you may think about it as just your fish fry, but like it is a huge impact on what actually gets thrown away, especially when we think about what are those big numbers in the US. And really what we want to think about today is how we sort of close these loops and these systems. So right now within the United States, a lot of the way that we do things is sort of this linear system that we have up on the screen. And this illustration is actually from a organization called The Story of Stuff. I was like, I got this, Story of Stuff, which is a really great resource, which we love, but it really thinks about where our stuff comes from and where it goes. But we basically get stuff from the earth, right? We make it into something, we package it, we ship it somewhere, all having impacts along the way. We use it and then we throw it away. And when it goes to the landfill, it does not do anything for us ever again. It gets buried there and it stays there forever. And we really want to think about how can we start creating systems that mimic nature a little bit more, where things go around in a circle, right? We don't want this. We want to think about stuff like this. So in the case of plastics, or any of our stuff, we want to take stuff, we're going to take stuff from the earth because we live here. We get to use the earth as folks who live here, and we want to use it, but then we want to give it back, right? We want to cycle it back around again, so that it's sort of completing that loop as nature does. So we can think about this with a lot of different materials. Food and composting is sort of the easiest one, right? We grow our food in the earth. We're going to eat the parts of it that we want to. It does show carrots here. You can eat carrot tops, but you don't have to. And then if you don't want to eat your carrot tops, right, you can take those and you can compost them, where they're going to go back into the soil again with those nutrients that are going to feed that next grouping of food that we're going to be able to eat. So cycling around again and again and again. So we want to think about how can we create more systems like this. So when it comes to plastics in particular, and I know this is kind of small, but I just liked it because it's sort of like pieced into three, there's four, I guess, this idea of the impacts of plastics in particular. So can anyone tell me, and again, if you don't know, that's okay. It's like a pop quiz time. Where does plastic come from? Like petroleum, right? So when we use plastics, we are connecting in directly with that system of petroleum that creates the same products like the gasoline in our car, that like airliner fuel, diesel, all of these things that when burned or even when going through production, they're going to create a byproduct, which is going to be carbon dioxide, right? That's going to go into our atmosphere. When it goes into our atmosphere, it contributes to this blanket-like effect the atmosphere has around our Earth, which keeps our Earth nice and warm. This is great because we don't want to be as cold as the vacuum of space, right? But as we put more and more carbon dioxide up into our atmosphere, it thickens that blanket more and more, to the point now where like things are getting a little uncomfortable and our climate is getting disrupted. So that's sort of the basic process of what we call climate change. But using plastics does feed into this cycle because it does come from that same source material as petroleum, gas, oil, any of these types of things. So when we're like extracting that petroleum from the ground in order to make our plastics, right? There's leaks there, there's spills there, there's environmental impacts there. So we're having effects at that point along the line. When we're refining and manufacturing it, we're going to be sending different pollutants into the air, including carbon dioxide, but also chemicals that might harm breathing patterns and the environment around it. There's lots of evidence out there, like hour-and-a-half long documentaries you can watch that talk about the impact of some of these refineries on the communities that live around them, which cause huge environmental justice concerns throughout the United States, but also around the world. Once we finally get in contact with plastic, there's a lot of evidence that it has pretty negative effects on our personal health. At this point, I think it's pretty solidly shown that all of us have plastics within us right now because we're getting it from our water, we're getting it from our food, we're inhaling it, right? And so we're starting to learn more and more about these negative effects, but it's something that touches all of us. And then eventually when we go to throw it away, recycling it is good. And like I do really want to reassure people that like we have a recycling center here in St. Louis. If you're number 1s and 2s especially, and number 5s, make it all the way to that recycling center and get sorted out. They are being recycled. So we work really closely with them. You know, we go to the facility a lot. That stuff is getting recycled once it makes it there, right? But a lot of that stuff maybe isn't making it there, right? Which we'll talk about a little bit in a minute. But a lot of it's making it out into our environment. In other parts of the United States, there are communities that favor incineration of their waste. We do not do that here in St. Louis, but there are communities where that happens, which puts all that plastic right back into the atmosphere again. So at every step along the way, plastic is not doing us any favors. And it's really harming not only our planetary health, but our personal health as well. So when we think about this within fish fries, or even like in a school context or sort of like trying to move food quickly, styrofoam and plastics are the alternatives that a lot of folks go with. They're cheap. You can throw them away pretty easily, like in a landfill container. They're very convenient, right? But that's only because we don't see all these impacts or necessarily consider all these impacts along the chain. And if those impacts were really evident to us or really clear to us at any point along the way, we might not see it as convenient anymore. So my argument is that if nothing else, if we can move away from styrofoam, that is like, I think, one of the best things that can come out of this. But yes, that all along the way, there's impacts from plastic on our environment and on our personal health. I'm going to pause for a second. Does anyone have any questions? Yeah.
So should that refrigerator,
Yeah.
right? Does it not break down?
Ooh, so that's a really good question. So the question was about, does food waste break down in landfills, right? And I remember like so clearly when I was growing up, like at school, like taking stuff in the fall and like digging a hole and different types of materials and burying it underground and then digging it up in the spring and seeing like how fast stuff decomposed, right? And I think when I thought of landfills, I kind of used to think of them as large compost piles, right? And that stuff was going there and it was breaking down, and plastics took a while and some other stuff took a while, but like food was, going back to the soil, right? And I think the more I learned, landfills are really not designed to break stuff down. That's not their job. And that's not what they're regulated to do. A landfill's job is to contain waste in the safest way possible so that it is not leaking out into the environment. And actually, a lot of landfills do a really good job of that, right? But the way that they do that is very different than composting and makes it really challenging for stuff to break down. And so a lot of times what happens is as stuff sort of gets compressed, because they're trying to get more stuff in, right? They're also trying to squeeze out oxygen, because that can be a really big fire hazard at a landfill. But oxygen is what our decomposers need to break stuff down. So a lot of times what happens is stuff ends up almost like mummified in those top layers, and stuff actually sticks around a lot longer in landfills than it would if you just like buried it underground somewhere like in your backyard. So it does eventually break down. Like, I do not want to say that it doesn't, but oftentimes like it's not in the same timeline or in the same way that we're really thinking about. But that is a good question, because I think I had that same story in my brain until I visited a landfill for the first time. And I was like, oh, this is a different thing entirely. Yeah.
I've heard a lot about microplastics being inside us.
Mm-hmm.
Do we know the health implications of what that means?
Yeah, so I would say some yes, some no, and there's more and more studies that are coming out about that all the time. So like I tend to use resources like the Center for Environmental Health. The one that I use here is CIEL, and honestly, I think I meant to write that down somewhere, and I did not, about what that stands for. Did I put it over here? Aha, Center for International Environmental Law. I was like, I know I made a note to remember what that acronym is. And so there's more studies coming out about it. I don't think right now we have the full suite of implications of what's happening. We know that especially, so like, for example, styrofoam, which is number 6 plastic, if you've ever looked at it, its chemical name, we might call it polystyrene, which is why you might see PS with it as well. We know that like styrene is a carcinogen, right? And when we put hot food on polystyrene or on styrofoam, that's going to start leaching those chemicals out of it. Really, anytime you heat plastic is when things start coming out of it. And so does that mean that everybody who eats off of styrofoam is going to get cancer? No. And like there's not, but does it raise the chance? Perhaps, right? And so I'm not knowledgeable enough of all of the studies, but there is, I think, a growing body of work that there are health implications with more and more microplastics in our environment and in us. Yeah.
Ready? Can you say a little something about food waste and landfills and what it emits? Like methane?
I can, yes. So again, we talked about how our decomposers really love oxygen, right? So they love working with oxygen. Oxygen is their friend. When we squeeze oxygen out of a system, that means that the things that are going to help us decompose are doing it what's called anaerobically, meaning without oxygen. When we let that happen, a lot of those little bugs, not bugs, they're bacteria and stuff, microorganisms, as they're breaking stuff down, their byproduct is going to be methane. And so a lot of methane is going to be created in landfills. Now, by law, all landfills that are permitted are required to manage their methane in some fashion. Now, that does not mean that some of it does not leak out, that some of it does not get into the atmosphere, right? A lot of landfills, the way that they do it is the methane goes up into a tower and they just burn it, which does put carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Methane, in comparison to carbon dioxide, is a pretty powerful greenhouse gas. So it actually causes more warming over 100 years than carbon dioxide is going to by trapping more heat. So it's really one of the ones we don't want up there. While methane is not part of smog, it's sort of like a precursor to smog. So I think it was last week, 2 weeks ago, when we had like a full week where every day it was like a bad air alert day, and that was because of smog. Methane is not our friend when it comes to smog. And so there's lots of reasons we do not want more of that breakdown happening. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, so so the one I know about, again, because I dig through trash all the time, is our local landfill, which is going to be the Champ landfill, which is in Maryland Heights, right? It's sort of where like 141, 70, and 270 sort of form like this little like elbow almost, or like a little nook, right? It's not very little, right? But like the landfill is sort of like right in there. If you've ever gone to like Hollywood Casino Amphitheater, it's right across 141 from there. They do have a methane recovery system, which does recover methane from the landfill. So they have around 220 wells that actually suck the methane out of the landfill, and it gets pumped over to an Ameren facility currently, where it's burned to create electricity. They can create electricity for about 10,000 homes using methane from the landfill. And I'm not going to remember the name of it, but we'll eventually go into Spire's natural gas lines. They're building something there that's going to take additional methane from the landfill, that's going to clean it up and then put it into Spire's natural gas line. So it will go out. They have like a quarry that's also actually part of the landfill. So some of that methane goes over there to power their facilities. It actually also, because Pattonville High School is right next to the landfill, right next to the landfill, they actually get some methane pumped over to there as well, and they use that as their heating source. So there are ways to do it. The last time I looked at numbers, about 20% of landfills in the United States do that, but that's been rapidly growing, so that number may be much higher now than I know about, but we do that here in St. Louis. Yeah, Luce.
This is worse than, too. What is the impact?
Yeah, so that's a good question. It's a hard one. I'm not going to tell you right now, I don't have a great answer for you. And that's because for me, I'm like, the way our landfills currently run, and this landfill's going to run this way for, even if we were to like close it today because we went zero waste around Missouri, which is not going to happen, but let's pretend, right? This landfill will still be creating methane for like 40 to 50 years, if not longer, right? So like it is a waste product that we are locked into. So at this point, we get to decide what we want to do with it, right? And so I don't think, and this is personal, right? I don't think burning it for energy is like the worst thing we could do for it, right? And when I say refining it, I mean because the gas comes out with mainly carbon dioxide and methane and some other gases, and so they filter those out is what I mean by refining. It's like cleaning it up. But past that, and I know that they've got like attachments on the Ameren facility that like help, I think, to take some of like the byproducts out that when it's burned. I don't know for 100% sure. I'm not as familiar with that part of it, but it's a good question that I don't have a perfect answer to. Yeah.
Homestead, the hosting. I can understand that the plant material, that's great. But what haven't we started any things like bulbs, strip shells?
Ooh, that's such a good question that I'm actually going to let Sean from New Earth answer a little bit.
Right now.
If you want to answer it now, that's fine.
When you need spot, like you can't do it in a backyard compost bin because backyard compost bins, you need at least a cubic yard of material for the pile to heat up. And it's heating up just because you're putting food in it and the microbes are all, I don't know if you speak up. Oh yeah. Yeah. Okay. So meat, dairy, bones, they're all okay to go in a compost pile if it's done at a larger scale than backyard composting. So either like community composting, which might be just having windrows that are like my size of me. They're kind of a pyramidal structure. So as long as you have more than a cubic yard of material, you're putting all that food and energy into the pile, and the bacteria and all the little microbes it's like having a bunch of kids in a gym running around. Once they start running, they start getting red, they start getting hot, they start breathing more. And so the piles, once they're that cubic mass size, they insulate themselves. And so all that heat and energy actually continues to accumulate in the pile. So the pile gets up easily to 140 degrees plus, and you're essentially cooking it for multiple, days, if not weeks. So all that, all the bones, I was just at a compost conference yesterday and they were talking about composting like 500,000 pounds of fish guts, and you can put them in the pile, and less than 2 weeks later, the fish are gone, including the bones. So as long as it's managed right and built correctly, it's going to break down. And harder bones, like bones from like cows, they're gonna take a while to break down, but the microbes will continue to chew on them. And usually, what you do at a compost site is you screen out all the big stuff and you throw it back into the pile, and then the second, third time, it actually begins to break down, but it has to be at a larger scale than just backyard. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So these are all great questions. I'm going to keep going with just a little bit more data about single-use plastics in our community and some of the stuff we've learned and sort of their impact, and then we'll do another round of questions at the end. If anything really comes to mind that you're like, I have to know it right now, please raise your hand and we'll stop and do that question. So we have been actually gathering a lot of data about single-use plastics in our local St. Louis environment over the past couple of years. A lot of this work actually happened, I would say, like 2021 into 2022 through two different projects. So one of them was through an EPA-funded project that actually put these trash traps into streams around the St. Louis area. So one went into Mackenzie Creek right before it enters River Des Peres. One of them went into River Des Peres in Heman Park in University City. And then another one went into Deer Creek in Deer Creek Park or Rocket Ship Park, depending on at what age you came to it. So So they kind of look a little bit like this, and the whole idea was that they would capture plastics that were going, or really any waste that was going downstream, to kind of see what's actually flowing through our waterways and what are we picking up, right? And so they gathered this data for around a year. There's some months where they didn't get data because there were really big floods and the traps broke away and all of the trash went with it. But in general, it's a pretty good snapshot of what happens. And I will sort of help interpret, but this is a little bit of what they found. So big important things to know is that orange is styrofoam and dark blue is plastic. So knowing those bits of information, right, we can tell that the overwhelming amount of stuff that we find is going to be plastic and styrofoam, right? And one of the other big things we saw is that in our summer months, we saw these huge spikes because most of these were in public parks where people might go to have like picnics, family reunions, birthday parties, sporting events, all these other types of things where they might have these types of plastics, right? So this is from Deer Creek in Deer Creek Park, Heman Park in University City, so River de Pere, we see that really big spike, but again, we see overwhelming amounts of styrofoam and plastic. And then again in Mackenzie Creek, we see exactly the same trend. So we can see in pretty much all of at least our smaller waterways around the St. Louis area, you can pretty much guarantee that most of what you're going to find is going to be styrofoam or single-use plastic. Styrofoam is really challenging because once it gets out into the environment and it gets into water, it just breaks apart and it becomes all these other tiny foam pieces, and it's actually incredibly challenging to recover. So I think it's in 2 weeks is when we'll be organizing our River de Pere Trash Bash, which is where a whole bunch of folks go out on one day and try and clean up. I actually was in the spring for Confluence Trash Back at a site in Florissant, and there was a bunch of broken up styrofoam in a lake, and like trying to get it out of the water is like, it's like you put your hand in and you think you've gotten it, or like you put your little device in to get it and you think you've gotten it, and then it like keeps getting away from you, right? So styrofoam can be a really big challenge in water. So that's water-based stuff, right? The other project that we really worked on was in partnership with like National Geographic and the Mississippi River Cities and Towns Initiative. These things all have really long names. I didn't name them. Did a project, here we go again, called the Mississippi River Plastic Pollution Initiative, right? Where they asked communities up and down the Mississippi to actually gather data on areas close to the river that were on land to see what kind of waste we were finding, right? And lo and behold, about 75% of the waste that was picked up at these 3 sites, and St. Louis was actually one of those first pilot sites, was plastic. And this is like the whole range of stuff we found. Cigarette butts were actually the number 1 land item that we found, and they do fall under plastics because they have part of like their construction is like little bits of plastic. Followed by food wrappers, beverage bottles, and foam fragments, right? So not any really big surprises there. And so there's just a lot of evidence that even in St. Louis, this is getting out into our communities. So ways to think about this with a fish fry, right? There's, you know, if you're trying to get away from styrofoam, trying to get away from single-use plastics, you know, there's a lot of creative options. I think the 2 that are most obvious to me is thinking about reusables in the forms of metal trays, or using compostable, certified compostable trays that don't have PFAS, which are those persistent chemicals that have like, are also in everything now as well, that are becoming like more of a health concern. So these are sort of 2 options. I'm a really big fan of reusables. And I know that not every place is going to have that capacity, because if you don't have a dishwasher, it's sort of a non-starter. And I also know that dishwashers, especially at an industrial level, are incredibly expensive. They take another person to operate. So, you know, long term, I think that should be the goal. But like, if by February, that's not where you're at, like, I'm not don't lose sleep over it. But I think if you do have a dishwasher, reusables are something that really should be considered if it's something you're open to, because it's, again, something that could maybe go to like other events that you're having within that space. If there's a school that's also eating lunch within that same space, that's something that can go and be of use at the school too. So I think there's like multiple ways that those things can be used, but I would say that's really the gold standard would be reusables. I think compostables are another great alternative if like you don't have a dishwasher, because if you don't have one, like reusables are just is not going to be a thing. I worked as a dishwasher for a short stint in high school. Like I'm well aware of what it takes to like run an industrial dishwasher. It takes a lot. And so again, but I think these are two really good options. And New Earth is going to talk a little bit more about sort of that certified compostable route. But it can be a really good option. It's what we use at the garden for our large events, is ensuring that folks have certified compostables. The other place that if you're really looking to get some of this stuff reimbursed is, I think I saw on the agenda that there is some grant funding from the Archdiocese. Okay, perfect. But the other one that we use, and again, you'll have to read this and kind of see if it applies to your particular situation, but Plastic Free Restaurants does give out grants to help replace plastic items with reusables. So again, if maybe you already have a dishwasher, but you don't have the reusables, this could be a way to fund getting the reusables. And they work with nonprofits, publicly funded schools. They do also work with restaurants that are for-profits. They just reimburse at a slightly lower rate if it's a for-profit. So again, like think about, where you fall in this whole realm and what that might look like. But these are options as well that people have used pretty successfully within the school world and also the restaurant side of things to fund getting reusables. Yeah.
All right, I keep taking pictures. You're showing great stuff.
Yeah.
Are you going to copy this? Slide that.
I'm happy to do that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Then yes.
Okay. But yeah, so this is like another good way to look at it. Yeah. So when I have worked with them previously, I've seen like a full spreadsheet of stuff. Now that has evolved over the years, and kind of what they've done has evolved over the years. But in general, it just has to be that you're not using plastic. At least when I've worked with them previously. Again, that could have like, I just looked at their website this morning to make sure I was like refreshing myself. They do have suggested folks that you can use, but I think as long as you're like, especially with reusables, if you're replacing plastic with metal, they'll reimburse for those, I believe. How is it for the process? I haven't gone through it personally, but we know some schools who have used it. I know Earth Day 365 is another organization that has done some of this previously, and a lot of schools around the country have gone this route. So, yeah.
At the school. And all this stuff gets started to grab everything else.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it will break down quicker than styrofoam will. I think the improvement that you get from using a compostable tray is that I think there's a lot of evidence that styrofoam, especially when you put hot things on it, does leach things into our food. So I think like the health impact is like the big number one. I think the other thing is that putting styrofoam into landfills, like long term, it's not going to break down as quickly. So like you gain a little bit there. Really, if you got compostables, you would want to compost them with a friend like New Earth Farms, or Total Organics, if that's like a setup that you already have at your organization, just kind of depending on where you're at. So you ideally would want it to go to a compost facility, but I still think you gain even if you don't end up composting them. Yeah.
So we keep out of a situation where there's don't have dishwashing capacity or metals.
Yeah.
And we don't have compost capability either. So we don't have plastic is particle. What's the way we go to say about it?
So like if you don't have composting capabilities and you don't have a dishwasher, yeah. I would still always try and move away from styrofoam if you can. Even if what you end up using goes in the landfill, I just think like in general, moving away from styrofoam is good for like everyone's health, personal health, and then also the planetary health. So you're maybe not getting, again, the same impact as if you composted it, but I think in terms of people who are eating off it and consuming it, you're gaining there in terms of sort of those health impacts. Yeah.
So what if we have like a whole like stock full of styrofoam to move towards compostable? What do we do with styrofoam?
That's such a good question, and that's like a personal a thing that the folks are going to decide. If it were me, right? Man, it's so hard because I do everything I can to not eat off of styrofoam.
Would you just use it up and then start?
I would.
Is that like?
I mean, I would, because otherwise you're just throwing it away without getting any use from it.
Hated ours, yeah.
Yeah.
Like when we had the victims with the tornadoes and some of the disasters where they didn't have any dishes, we offloaded some of ours there. So at least they had something here that they quickly.
Well, but it's getting used and it's not getting washed.
So that was our way, because as long as we kept it in stock, we have a culture of people that would keep using them and reordering them. So we had to banish them.
Yeah. So
So aside, like, let's say we think this is so horrible, we don't want to eat off it. We don't want to give it to somebody else to eat off of. What do we do with that? With like the non-used styrofoam? Where would it even go?
yeah.
Those old meats.
Yeah, I think like really eating off of like eating cold food off of styrofoam. Well, it's not my favorite. It doesn't have the same. It's really heat and acid that really start leaching stuff out of it. So if you've got like cold items or things like that, I mean, in terms of health impacts, it's not the worst thing to eat off of styrofoam. But yeah, I would try and use it down on your cold stuff if you can, and then get rid of it and never buy it again. But yeah, that's a challenging question. I wish I had a better pros cons answer for you.
I say, not let it cook in say. Stop.
Yeah.
Sorry, what any?
Can it be recycled? That's a really good question. Yeah, and I would have to look it up. So there are people, and this is a good green business question, so I'd have to check with my green business folks. I would say in general, styrofoam is not recyclable. However, if you haven't used it and there's no food waste on it, they do have for like industrial styrofoam, and I'm thinking like when warehouses get shipped a bunch of stuff and they have those huge packs of styrofoam, they have, and they're it's kind of a cool idea, but they have like densifiers for styrofoam. So styrofoam is mainly air. So they have things that'll suck all of the air out of the styrofoam and densify it down to like basically like 50-pound logs. And those can be recycled, but it can't be anything that's ever had like food on it. And I am not 100% sure. I know we have them in the St. Louis area, but they tend to be concentrated in either facilities that are taking that amount in, and they've gone ahead and purchased themselves one. So it's a good, here we go. This is why I brought this pen up here, right? Okay, perfect. So if you texted her, then that's fine. But I don't know right off the top of my head who's got a densifier. I know some of like the electronics recycling places have had them previously, but I don't know how open those are to like, yeah. Yes. Yeah, so there are compostable versions of all of those. So I would suggest moving to those. Again, I would try and move away from those. If you still have them in stock, I would probably run them down just because they're not exactly the same as styrofoam in terms of how they break up and things like that. But again, there are compostable versions of all of those things. There's also reusable versions of all of those things as well. But yes, and we've had some schools that have tried to get around not having a dishwasher and tackling utensils by actually purchasing a set of utensils for all of the students, and then the students bring those utensils and they sort of rotate them back through their house. Has been, and I know that's not an elegant solution, but there is like some problem solving on the utensil side that you can maybe look at. But compostables, they have tons of different compostable versions of utensils as well. Yeah.
So, I get questions. We are being asked to do these both places. And I get questions about what is the relative environmental impact of washing in the hundreds of plates, because those are, using both spot water and hot waters, which has to be versus a compostable plate that it's compostable.
Yeah, so there you're getting into life cycle analysis, right? And so this is one where I would have to dig in, right? Because I do not have these numbers off the top of my head. So life cycle analysis is like actually a pretty technical process, and there's not a lot of people in the world that are actually really good at it. But life cycle analysis is a process that takes in all of the impacts of something from the moment we basically get it from the earth to when we dispose of it, right? And it also looks at all of these different factors. So impact on land, impact on water, impact on air quality, impact on climate. And all of those are going to be different depending on which thing you're looking at, right? So I think in general, across the board, most evidence is that for reusables, if you use reusables enough, and for each item, this magic number is going to be different. Okay, but if you use reusables enough, they're going to be better for the environment in the long term. So even if you account for sort of like the water usage and the hot water usage and some of those other elements, reusables in the long term are going to be better. If you're comparing like one use to one use, the single use compostable is probably going to be better. But if you're looking at say 40 uses of a plate versus, like that only one single use and replacing it with 40 compostables, you're probably going to come out ahead in the reusable. Does that make... So no, typically if you use it for long enough, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Better.
Yeah.
But they really quantify that. The now sounds like kind of guess. I'm not being critical.
Yeah.
We don't really know.
Yeah, I'm saying in this stuff, so I have only dug into this like very deep with like plastic bags. So like that is the study I have running in my background where somebody looked at the analysis of like single-use plastic bags versus reusables, looking at cloths and like the plastic-based bags, right? And so there is probably, if we search it online, a life cycle analysis for compostables and for reusables. I just don't have that data at my fingertips, but like in general, when I've looked into this, reusables, you use them for long enough, you're going to come out ahead. I don't have numbers. So yeah. Where are we at?
How much more of your presentation?
Oh, we're just gonna say, if you want to learn more about food waste, you should come on
November 10th.
November 10th and learn more about food waste.
This is an incredible conversation, and we are really getting into the meat of things. So yes, thank you to Maggie. We have asked Maggie to share more with us as part of our Laudato Si speaker series, and we are going to host that at Tau Center, which is Sister Cheryl's Community's headquarters, HQ, in Kirkwood, and that's going to be on. And this is breaking news. We just figured this out this morning on November 10th. That's a Monday evening. So stay tuned for details on that. We will share that out with you this coming week. Maggie, that was incredible. And there's so many questions, right? And so many things to consider. And I like to look at things as like on a scale of good, better, best, where like all of these pieces are coming together in different ways and along a spectrum of time, like a timeline. We are not perfect. We're human beings. We live in an imperfect world. So we can do what is the next best thing. I don't expect anybody to be like, if you've heard of zero waste before, Holy Redeemer does one fish fry, 1 or 2 every year. I've helped to make it, we call it zero waste. Low key, it is not exactly zero, but it is very close. And so, I don't expect perfection, but like Maggie it's hard to quantify some of these things. We just have to have the courage and explain the triple bottom line to do the next best thing. So, Maggie, thank you so much for that. I think next we have Sacred Heart. Is that right on the agenda? I can't remember right now. Someone check the agenda. So thank you for all of the questions and engagement, and I'm happy to stick around and chat afterwards and then have a phone call with you. And this is the beginning of a conversation. And I'm really looking forward to what is next. Sacred Heart is in Valley Park. Here in Brook has been a part of our Laudato Si Commission since it started last year. And she has invited some of her green team here this morning to explain to us what they do for their fish fries and their timeline each year. When they started, she will explain, gets a little better each time to ironing out a lot of the questions that we have on our minds and that we've talked about this morning. Are you getting that up? All right. You're amazing. And so I will let Karen introduce her team and you guys take it away from here. Thank you, Sacred Heart.
Hi. Thank you. So, as Jamie said, I am Karen DeBrook, Sacred Heart Valley Park, a member of our Green Team. We have Marilyn Stapleton, who's also a member of the Green Team. She's going to talk. And then Bob Hawk back there, which I'm going to invite up. The man, he's from the Knights of Columbus. So the only way this works, and I'm going to get into it, is the Green Team works with the Knights of Columbus to figure out how to make things sustainable. So Sister Cheryl, Maggie, and Jamie have teed up a lot of what I am going to talk about today. So it has been great. So here, can you project? Yes. Okay, I just need to figure out what the right button is. How about I get it going and then it should? Okay. Sometimes you just need one. Okay. So Maggie talked about what sustainability is, and I just pulled up the 6 R's. So what, just to remind us all, and what we've tried to focus on is a lot of reducing what is going to the landfill, and we can do that. What can we reuse? What could we recycle? What could we maybe just not even do at all? And a lot of that requires rethinking. On what we've been doing in the past. This is the way that we've always done it. Hey, can we do it maybe a little bit differently? All right, so now that's the one. There we go. So as I just said, the only way it works is it's a partnership. The Knights really own our fish fries. They're the ones who have run it every year. They have just turn out delicious food every year. They have created this space for the parish to come together. It's, a lot of community people will sit there for a couple of hours talking to different parishioners and friends. It's just a great environment. And they're focused on, that charity, unity, fraternity, and patriotism. So charity, all the proceeds, the profits from the fish fries go to charity. St. Vincent de Paul, buying a ultrasound machine for, the pregnancy center, down in a rural county, helping disabled children. A lot of really, really good stuff comes out of the profits that we make at our fish fry. And then we have the Green Team, and we came into fruition from being inspired by Pope Francis's encyclical on the environment, Laudato Si, which we all know what that is now, thanks to Sister Cheryl. So we are focusing on that care for creation. What can we do to really take care of the earth and for each other? It's not just the earth, it's really for ourselves and, to thank God for what he's given us. So really, two great missions. One is not better than the other. So we can't say, hey, forget everything that you're doing and let's just only, let's just change everything to be totally sustainable and throw profits out the window. No. So our challenge is, how do we increase sustainability and maintain profitability and affordability of fish fries? When I first started approaching the nights, it's like, well, just raise your prices. This stuff is more expensive, just raise your prices. But we don't want to have families say, I can't come. It's too expensive. We want that sense of community. We want people to be able to come. So that is our challenge that we have to keep in mind. So now I'm going to start on what our journey was. And our first step was to look at what we could do. So we had a lot of the throwaway plastic flatware. So we said, what if we used real silverware? And the way we got this real silverware is we had members that went and canvassed all the St. Vincent de Paul thrift stores in the neighborhood, even some Goodwill. We wiped them out. So any college student that was looking for cheap silverware, it ran out of luck during that time. And we didn't care whether our silverware matched or not, and it truly doesn't. It's a very eclectic feeling, but it worked out great. So we were able to get rid of the plastic ware in the dining hall when you're eating there. And then for the take-home stuff, we used to always throw in, okay, you're getting 2 meals, we'd throw in 2 sets of the plastic silverware. We stopped doing that, and we would only give it out to people when they asked. So essentially, it was kind of like passive refusal. Like you either ask for it or you're not going to get it. Because if you're taking it home, you don't need it. You have your own silverware there. Now, in doing this, it was great. We reduced costs because we didn't have to buy that plastic ware over and over again. But we also increased the work at the fish fry, right? Because now we have to wash the silverware. So the green team members started showing up to help offset that extra work. And in the beginning, we were running 2 kitchens, one for takeout, one for in-house dining. So we'd be up in the in-house dining in the kitchen area, washing the silverware. We'd also wash pots and pans while we were waiting for more silverware to come. So really, we're trying to do our part to help out. Okay, so then step 2. So we did that for a year or two, and we're like, okay, what else? We've got this styrofoam, which we just heard how bad that was for us. And I think everybody was like, oh, we wish we could do something different. Styrofoam is just so darn cheap. And when you're thinking about profits and affordability, that seems to be the way we go. So what we did was hey, let's replace that styrofoam with reusable plates. And green team members pitched in, and we bought enough plates to have people eat off of at our fish fries, and we were really, really excited. This was, you can see, one of our green team members there is washing the dishes. We've got some folks, some parishioners eating off of them, some nights showing them off. We were really excited. And we ran a pilot right before, the year before the pandemic. So I think we only got to do this once. And we were in our own kitchen there, and in-house was in one kitchen and takeout was in the other. Then the pandemic came, so everything stopped for a while. When we finally came back to in-house dining, we had consolidated to one kitchen because we didn't really have enough volunteers to have both places. So we're all in one thing. We get the plates out. And what happens? We ran out of hot water. And it was like, we can't use the plates because we have all these pots and pans and everything else that have to be washed. We can't use the plates. And it was heartbreaking. So we had a decision to make. What are we going to do? Go back to styrofoam, which was cheaper, or maybe we could do something else. And very grateful to the Knights, they decided, hey, let's not go back to styrofoam. Let's introduce compostable, which is more expensive. So that's what we did. That year, we ran out of hot water. We pivoted. We got the compostable plates. That was great. So we were pretty excited about that, but we weren't composting that year. So then we thought, okay, really, we want to get that advantage of the composting. So the next year we looked at how are we going to do that. And we work with Total Organics Recycling. It's right down the road from us in Valley Park. We use 1 tote per fish fry. So we have about 7 fish fries starting on Ash Wednesday. These big yellow totes show up. We pull 1 in to use for each fish fry. It gets picked up sometime during the week. We are composting food, liquids, the plates, and we make sure that the plates that we're buying are certified, in such a way that they will take them. Now, this is expensive. It was $700. So we're like, how are we going to fund this? Because remember, we don't want to decrease profits. We don't want to make the meals more expensive. So the Green Team, every year in August, we run an electronics recycle event. It costs us $300 to have that truck out there. And we are not a fundraising thing. We don't have all this money. So we ask for a free will donation for people coming through to help offset the costs. Well, we end up with more than $300. So we have taken that money that we make in August. So, and we let people know too, like it's going to cover the costs of the recycle event or the electronic recycle event, and then extras go to Green Team initiatives. So we use that money to pay for composting. So the Knights are paying more for our compostable plates. We're paying for the composting, and we end up with this great dirt, and I love this because I think because of the fact we had to move away from reusable plates to the compostable ones, which is really sad. It kind of accelerated us getting to the composting and that food waste. So at least we are doing that part, and that's going well.
Yep. Dollars for all 7 fish fries, not.
Yep. So yeah, $700. They drop off 7 bins and. Yeah, but.
Sounds pretty reasonable.
Well, that's good.
I just want to add one thing. The reason you get something certified is these companies make sure that it does in fact degrade in a commercial compost facility. And they also validate that there are no chemicals added. PFAS was mentioned earlier. So there's a lot of places out there that say they're compostable, but unless they're certified, there's no verification that those 2 things are not there.
Yeah. How many plates fit is that tote? Because we serve 25 8 tables every week.
Yes. So what we do to make sure it all fits is we don't just throw them in willy-nilly. We stack the plates. When we get a good, it's going to fall over, then we put them in there. So everything is, so we try and use up as much airspace as we can, and we make it work. And then, we fill up all the crevices with food and liquid.
Just in-house, we average probably about 400 meals in-house per week, and then same. But
okay.
Yep. So yeah, so it's a lot about stacking and practical stacking to make it all fit, because we don't want to do 2 totes. Okay, so what's our process? So this is for the in-house part, is we had to remove the trash cans from the common areas, because when we first started with the compost bins, trash cans were out there, and people like to, get up and throw their own stuff away. So what were they doing? Throwing the compostable plates in the trash bins. They're throwing food away. So we have to make sure at the start of every fish fry, trash bins are not in public places. And then we have people, bus tables. So I've got a picture of our parish priest who is helping out. Typically, we have kids looking for confirmation hours that come and do all our busing for us. And their job is just pick up all the trash, don't worry about what it is, everything off the table, and bring it to that trash sorting table. And, Maggie talked about she has spent a lot of her career sorting trash. We have volunteer opportunities for sorting trash. It's a very coveted position there. And So the bin comes over, after they bust the tables, and we just stand there with aprons and gloves on. And if it's something that can be washed and reused, it goes off to the kitchen. If it's something that is compostable, a plate, food, whatever, it goes in the compost bin. If it can be recycled, cans, cardboard, whatever, that goes, off to the recycle. And then everything else goes in the trash. So that's how we make sure that things aren't inadvertently being put in the wrong spot. Even like for our compost bin, if we accidentally threw in plastic or something and we contaminated it, we would get fined. So I am like, and people will come by because they see just the yellow trash can there without thinking, throw stuff in it all the time. So I go a little ballistic, and I'm always fishing stuff out. Now, I threw silverware in there once, so I had a dumpster dive.
You put the
Yep. Everything that is compostable just goes in the in that one thing. So as I said, the plates were stacking so that we can fit as much in there as possible, but we still get pockets, and then the food can fill in the pockets of air. And
you can walk on a site into the company like what you talked about.
Yeah.
That it goes something that could be done at a large scale.
Yep.
Or altering food waste. Yep.
Yes, and they do events like us, so they'll bring out the bins. It's really large scale. They will make the dirt, which you can go and actually buy from them if you want.
Sure.
No, they don't, which is okay. Yeah. So, okay, so now the next step is the take-home containers. Again, we were like, look, how do we get rid of styrofoam, which was our take-home containers? Compostable is really expensive and people aren't composting at home. So I'm going to turn it over to Marilyn to let us know what we came up with.
change slides. Okay. First of all, just to be honest, I used to work for Anchor Packaging, and that is the company we chose for our containers, and I'll explain why. Hopefully it'll help. We wanted to eliminate foam. That is the same thing as polystyrene number 6. It just doesn't degrade in the landfill. And I don't think any plastics degrade in the landfill. So that was our number one mission. How do we resolve that? Landfills generate greenhouse gases. We already talked about that. So we can move on to the next slide. When I started working with the Knights, I delivered a whole package of different kinds of containers, and they were very emphatic. They had to have 3 compartments because that's what they wanted to use on premise. It was important for them for portion control and to help the people that were filling the plates. So our takeout is outside. And so one of the other things that I think that our containers helped with is the fact that it's got a clear lid. So once those foam clamshells are closed, they don't stay closed. They pop open when they're in the bag. If you need to know, did you get what you ordered? You have to open it up, and there goes your heat retention. And so the products that we chose are polypropylene number 5s, which are in fact recyclable, along with PET number 1, the most recycled in the United States. And so, it was important to have a good quality food as well. Obviously, there's a cost impact to do this. These polypropylene containers are considerably more expensive than foam, can be as much as 50 to 60% more. But the reality is, if we're going to do something for the environment, it's important for us to evaluate how we can do that, even if there is a cost impact to that. I think the other thing that we do is we always continue to remind everyone in our community at Sacred Heart to recycle. And because we do this on a drive-through, people can certainly go inside and do takeout, but the majority of ours is a drive-through. You come in, you give your order, you pull up, and you just wait, and someone runs out with your bag of your good fish fry. But we decided to collect recyclable containers in the parking lot. So when someone comes through and says they're going to place a meal, we have signage and people saying,
when you finish your meal tonight, clean it up, and then bring it back next week because we're going to collect it here. Anchor Packaging said they would gladly take the product back to make absolutely sure it does get recycled. And we also had to start educating people because they thought recycled containers meant that we reused them at the fish fry. And so we had to make sure they understand, no, that's not what we're going to do. We're going to take them, grind them up, and then process them back into new packaging. That's what the waste haulers do. And so the more plastic you can recycle, the more money those haulers can make by processing it and reselling it. So obviously, it just keeps the cycle going. And so Anchor Packaging then has the ability to buy back, regrind, and process it back in with virgin materials to make more product. Another thing that I think is important with any plastic container that you evaluate, you want to check out to make sure that the company that's supplying the product has the certifications to verify that, in fact, they have product that is FDA approved, will withstand temperatures without damage to the food or the consumer, and that it's definitely used for customer reuse, consumer reuse. Those are all things that Anchor Packaging has posted on their website. So anybody that has those certifications, the manufacturer's name is on the box of the product you buy. So do your homework and just make sure that they're in fact doing what they need to do to make sure that they keep everyone safe.
Okay, thank you, Marilyn. So our journey is not over. We are not zero waste at Sacred Heart. We have reduced a lot, but we have a ways to go. So some of our next steps is eyeing the throwaway cups and napkins. Right now, they are not compostable, but I am hoping that maybe we can figure out how to make that happen this next year. We keep throwing out ideas to figure out a way to bring back at least some of our reusable plates. We might maybe hand wash 50 of them, a night or something. We just keep trying to figure that out. So I do hope that eventually we get there. Okay. So lessons learned. So here are things like, day one, things did not just go 100% perfectly, and we've learned a lot. I think Maggie even said this, go slow. If you're starting, especially if you're starting at ground zero, just choose one thing. And it doesn't have to be, silverware, whatever you think is going to work, just do that one thing. You will be introducing change. And most of us humans, we don't like change, right? I mean, I go to the grocery store and they've rearranged the shelves. And I'm like, whose bright idea was that? Now I got to spend all this time looking for whatever when I could just, walk in and get it. So if you are introducing even the real silverware over the plastic silverware, as I said, we had to wash it. We had to make sure that we got it. We were washing it quickly enough and drying it and getting it out. And, it causes stress because people are used to doing things one way. So give everybody grace, learn from each fish fry. Whatever you introduced on day one, it probably won't go perfectly. So be ready to pivot, to adapt. It might not be as major as running out of hot water. It could just be little things, but just go in with hey, the first time we do this is more of an experiment. We're going to figure out what worked, what didn't work. Let's change it for the next time and keep going. Educate, share with people how, what you're doing and how it's helping us take care of our world. We will put things on all the tables, showcasing the sustainability efforts that we are doing with the nights. We also will put in, some other things about tips that people can do at home to be more sustainable. So you really use that opportunity and to educate. And the biggest one is this partnering that I talked about, establishing that shared goal. We didn't start out that way. And this, when we finally figured it out, really was the turning point. So I'm going to have Bob from the Knights of Columbus come up and tell you about our rocky beginnings.
Eric made it sound really hunky-dory. family, and we were great teammates at the beginning, but it didn't really work out that way. So I'm here. I represent the Knights office, so I am very environmentally conscious, I think, but not all the Knights are. And so we are a museum. We have a big deal about our gold guides that run our fish fry efforts. I've done that in the last 2 years, and so when we started all these efforts, I was in charge of all the procurement and all these manufacturers, supplies, and all stuff. So my perspective is a little bit different. So one thing I haven't heard a lot today is all these environmental efforts, recycling, everything comes with a cost. Okay, so it might be a financial cost, might be a labor expense, but there's a cost to these things, and so it's easy to say, but geez, what's only $100 fish like? But our money goes to, a lot of our money goes to Circle Sarah Food Bank or St. Vincent Falls. So it's easy to say $1 fish card, but that might be the difference between somebody getting their leftovers. Like, hey, so our perspective, our college thoughts, it's our cards are, we run our fish complex business. Our goal is to get as much money we have, because all that money goes to help it afford our kid. We sponsor seminarians at the seminary. So it's not just not only every want to keep more environment, but you know that how much you spent, maybe expense of a seminary to 7, or maybe somebody getting their electrical outpaid. So my goal by being here is to give you an appreciation that not everybody has the same patience as you do, and to be understanding. An example is when we first started out, one of the first, my experience of this started out years ago is that when we first started Green Team in the parish, they came to us and they said, we'd like your fish rice to be more environmentally friendly. We think you should use compostable or reusable to-go containers, clamshell people. And so we used a lot of starch, and we now use plastic, and Marilyn talked about the cost differential. I don't know what plastic clamshells cost, because those are developed. That's my very generous for but we were resistant to swear sheeting, and we did it. And the mayors needed a very cost analysis of clamshells, for example. What do you think the cost differential was between styrofoam and what I'll call recyclable cement?
Ours was 1,300 fish rice in the 1,500 meals.
So I don't know if you're talking dollars or whatever. So the cost, the relative cost differential between styrofoam and what we initially priced out, like postal or the cardboard clamshells, was 10. So just to keep it, it's a styrofoam clamshell, a lot of small glasses. Postal one, it's at that. So we serve over 5,000 meals at the sea in our fish fry. Over half of those are to go, and then we were using styrofoam plates too. So that's a big expense, thousands of dollars actually costs. And so it's not just, it's for the environment, but thousands of dollars could literally be somebody out in the community not being able to pay their rent and become homeless. So that's our perspective, and we want to have it. And so initially we were very resistant. Said we can't do this. Our group, our men said that's not worth the cost, and that is. So then the great team said, how about using flatware? That was their initial suggestion. Okay, that's somebody has to buy flatware, and then you have to wash it. Big labor. Not huge, but there's a labor cost there. And our fish fries are pretty robust. We have a lot of, we have 60, 70 volunteers at the fish fry department. And so we're very busy. And And so we went and said, we don't really have the labor to wash that. So then finally the grade team, we said, maybe you can help us. And then they said, oh, okay, yeah, we'll do that. Oh, and we'll buy the silver. And then we're like, okay, now we're talking, right? Now this is more talking now. So to be honest, we felt initially like a little bit like we were being preached to. And I don't say that to insult care of Maryland. They've been very generous with the help that they provided. But I think initially they had their priorities, and they didn't have an appreciation for our perspective and what our priorities were. So when they started to approach it as a team, things worked a lot better. We made a lot of improvements. And then we had the issues with the reusable plates. But then they said, well, how about compostable plates? So again, we did a cost analysis. Well, they're a little bit more expensive, but they're not 10 times more expensive. So yeah, we're saving a lot of money on plant shells. We're saving money on plastic silverware. So yeah, we'll spend maybe 30 or 40% more on compostable plates or wood styrofoam plate. That's a reasonable trade-off for us. We wanted to do it. We want to help the environment, but we have other priorities too. So my advice is just try to be appreciative of that. If you have some proposals or ideas, the more that you can sell that, and you can do the research and find out what the cost is, and say, hey, how can we help you if you're dealing with another organization? I know some. Here's where the executive agrees. But if you can go to an organization that's right at Bishop and say, how can we help you become more environmentally friendly? Here's some options. We know this is a little bit more expensive. Maybe we can help you. Maybe we can help defer the cost, or maybe we can help provide you some help, labor help, environment, whatever. And I think you'll have a lot better luck. And I know ours, once we start working with the D team on more of a team, basis, we made some really good improvements. We continue to do that. But that's not my perspective, our perspective from the Knights. And we're really happy with the improvements that we've made. We reduced our waste a lot. But there were some stumbling blocks, but just my advice would be to show some appreciation. Realizing not everybody has the same guard, right? And everything is a box and a trade-off. And so I think, can make a lot of improvements and not necessarily hurt profits or, the other priority with the same.
Changes will be there. That's not working together. I'll swear a lot.
We're still battling. We're still working this reusable plate battle. I call it a battle because it's a battle with the reusable plates.
Well, what an argument for that.
It's one of the reasons why I asked the question because we went to the compostable plates, which we composed. We actually composed all those plates. The reusable plates are a bit of a challenge because they're labor intensive and need a lot of hot water, and we struggle with the capacity to wash all the dishes.
Well, we want to defray the cost of that compostable somewhat by doing a buying effort. It's what we're trying to save up now.
Well, it's not so much temptation. We have to figure out how we're going to make it work. And so I think we'll do that. And I know we're running out of time, so we get 2 minutes. Yes. Bye.
Given the size of some of parishes, some are larger, or smaller, as the Archdiocese at Reference Centers, the purchasing power of one is consolidated, like place your order by the state, we will order in mass, reduce unit costs, come pick it up.
James, for 2 minutes now.
I don't need to take 2 minutes. It's a really great question. And it's a really important question because we all know that the number of bottom lines that we have to consider, one of those is financial. We are in conversation right now. I can't make any promises quite yet as to how the Archdiocese can be of support. One way we can get support is the micro grant program that the Archdiocese is running. This year, we decided as a commission that we really want to help people get this started. So the micro grants this year will be focused on our fish fries. And those will be emailed to you, that application process, next week. And it's not going to pay for it all. It is going to hopefully just encourage a little bit of change with less impact on your bottom line. So that's what I have for you right now, but I know that this is an important piece for everyone to figure out, so we're going to try to see where that might lead us. Luce, I saw your hand up first, and then I'll come to you in your Mizzou gear. Oh, okay, yes, Miss Mizzou.
We worked with Leatherworks and for last year, and we placed a big order, and for all our next lemon fish fries also, but cheaper if they have a subscription, and we didn't feel like we needed for food that's year by year, but with the Archdiocese, and another thing I didn't know that there's certain, I don't know if the plates we bought are certain, but if they are, is that it could be Archdiocese buy the $100 subscription and let all the rest of us, you should get it cheaper if you got the subscription.
Yeah. That's an interesting question. Yeah. I don't know yet, but it's a question that we can discuss. We're also in conversation with a couple of local vendors who supply these goods and are working with our landfills and our compost facilities, so that because we've talked about PFAS, forever chemicals, we have to make sure that we're keeping those out of our compost facilities. So this particular vendor that we're talking with, everything that they supply is certified and safe. And so we are looking into it. Yeah. Luce.
So, the presentation for that, I've been studying the next speakers must get the but it can watch the very okay, it must be on the last, last issue the other only especially of market last one to get one last on insightful. So one answer here was it was an overarching wicked lousy. And so finding restrictions it got the fakes. It was a work getting out of the last last day. Number two, it has private chemicals to was a form of the weekend. And its massive containers are actually recommended to be used in the master level 2. The smaller ports is nearable because as the society, the plastic for the styrofoam is exposed to heat. It activates the chemicals ingredients in water to transfer while food.
Yeah, so totally understand. Yes, I understand your concerns. So number one, we felt like this was a better alternative. Okay, we like compostable take home, or it just isn't working for us right now because they're just going to go in the landfill. At least we can recycle. And I'm going to let Marilyn address the health concerns there.
Not all plastics the same. So when I said earlier to do your homework, yes, some haulers prefer not to have black because their equipment isn't able to process it efficiently. Again, that's not universal. A lot of people still can recycle. The plastic does not break down and create toxins. That's why you look for certifications on the manufacturer's website that in fact validates that their material doesn't do that. And reprocessing, they're talking about a very small amount that goes back into virgin materials that get then recreated. So it's not like you're taking the original product and only forming new products out of that. It's a blended version.
Thank you, Marilyn. Well, listen, I'm sorry. We could go down a whole plastics rabbit hole, couldn't we? And Luz is like the expert. She is with Beyond Plastics. She does incredible work. But I'm going to have to cap our conversation. Oh, Reginald, you get the last question.
So just to know, but I was doing some revision in some assignments, and then the possible that you get.
Yep.
Perfect.
Yep. And we do eventually want a different solution for take home if this was better than styrofoam. So
Really quick, people bringing up with later, there's all the exact,
That has health. That has some health from the health department. Yeah, there are some considerations there. Because I'll rub my plates before you. Okay, but I would have to cap that there. Thank you so much, Sacred Heart, Jane, thank you for your work. And for telling us and sharing with us the tricky parts of working in collaboration. Spot, thank you for being here to explain your perspective too. I appreciate that. John. And this is John Klein from New Earth Farm. He and his wife and his family do incredible work. I call it micro haulers. I'm not sure that word is picked out here. Yeah, but I am going to hand this over to John now.
Let's grab my notes. Here, while you're doing that, I think everyone. So the QR code, the website that is a link to our Pro application. So if you want to just put it on your phone, put it on like we did now. Apply to it right now, but just pull it up on your phones. Just on sustainable right? So take us this fair act. Then we'll answer more questions about that in the weeks. All right. Well, I'm John Klein. My wife and I own New Earth Farm Composting. We've got one of our bins here. And this has been a good conversation, and thinking through these things is not easy. So I appreciate the just practicalities of it and the graciousness we're all showing each other, because my wife likes to sound like, everything's not, can't do everything. We're saying not immediate. This meeting is just 5% gain here. It's 20 years down the road, and you gain lots of exciting. So do what you want. Just this, a little bit about myself. I love Presbyterian myself, but I worked at St. Louis University Hospital for 8 years as a chaplain, and I worked with a number of Catholic lay persons and brothers and sisters. And I will say I'm a little biased towards St. Pius's fish fry. Yeah, there you go. But my dear friend Todd Sanger, who's a chaplain, that's where he attends it. And I may want to talk to them too. They use real plates and real forks, and I don't know how they do it, but it just makes things a little classy in some ways too. But the other church we go to as well, we struggle with, okay, let's get away from the styrofoam, let's try to use the real plates. It's like, okay, who's gonna wash these down? Because we gotta see afterwards when we have our community meals to do that. But my wife and I, so I was a chaplain, I got kind of burned out from all the suffering and hardships and sad stories I was taking in, but I still wanted to do something good for the world. And I got connected with a community composters coalition. So there's, kind of like Judy was saying, there's all these little micro haulers, you might call it, or community composters. It's composting that's not, it's not backyard, it's not a huge industrial scale, but it's kind of in between. So we're part of this network of like 400 different groups across the U.S. who are at our scale. We're just composting in community gardens. We're significantly larger than us too. But essentially what we do is we have a small version of these bins. We have 4-gallon green buckets. We take those to folks' homes, and then we pick it up every week or 2 weeks. We're able to get two like spring water masks again, what you know, where the electric sprinter vans, family powered by coal. Hopefully, it's a step in the right direction. Increase the demand for vehicles that seem better for the environment. But so we take these 4 gallon buckets and swap them out for a clean bucket. People fill them up with food scraps, and it's just another weed service. So folks at their homes are separating their food waste, and they pay for us to collect it, and then we take it. And my wife and I live in Old North St. Louis. That's the logo here. And right across the highway, we were able to purchase some land from the city. We're developing our 1 acre compost site. So we take all the food waste there, we shop the next lockdown, and we mix it into big piles with wood chips. And once we get up that big volume of food waste and carbon mixed together, that's when the piles start heating up. Microbes start shouting down, and then the reason there's a charge for this stuff is, first of all, landfills are way too cheap. They say like, let's throw it away. Well, there's really like no way, not like ejecting this stuff into space. It's going into like a landfill. Originally, they were like landfills, they were filling in holes, right? Well, that other mountains, they're not landfilling it, they're building. So it's just creating a problem further down the line, but it's really cheap, especially if you have, Missouri has relative abundance of space, but it's going to cause problems down the line. And a lot of methane, it's amazing what they can do. And you see the waste management trucks around. It says it's a grain machine because they do power a lot of their vehicles with methane, but a lot of it also escapes as well. So composting is, it's in some ways, it's also labor intensive. So you can either do it with a pitchfork, kind of backbreaking work, or we have skid steer. And so we charge because we're not hauling material and taking it to where we can compost it and not be a nuisance to neighbors. But also, we manage that material for 6, 9, 12 months as well, mixing the piles, making sure it has an adequate amount of moisture, because the piles need browns and greens, oxygen, because the microbes, and they also need moisture because the pile's too dry. Life just stops, everything goes into hibernation. It's too wet, it leaves out of oxygen in there, but like the actual microbes live like on this thin layer of film around each little particle of food and wood. And so they need just that ideal 60% moisture for it to do their work at optimal level. So that's why we charge for their service. And compost has a ton of benefits. We do this experiment with like kids where you take a piece of bread and you take some flour. I guess I shouldn't have brought this. You take some flour, then you pour water on both of those. You kind of watch what happens to the different substances. And with flour, you see kind of runoff. You see cloudy water. You see it kind of turning into muck. Bread, like it just kind of sits there. The water that comes out of it is clear. Holds its structure still. So the only real difference between these two tables is that there's microbes in the bread. There's yeast in that flour, and that'll give you structure. So that's the exact same thing that we're doing when we apply compost to the soil. Dirt on its own, it's a mixture of minerals, sandstone, clay, and it's really a very thin layer of topsoil that actually has organic matter in it, which is broken down, all sorts of broken down organisms. And it's these little organisms in the pile that are doing that, and then when they get in the soil, they help them get instruction so that it's not just packed clay or packed silt. It actually has like structures so that the air can flow through it. It's just like that bread. It helps filter the water that goes through it rather than the water is vomiting and making soup or letting tree bases. Especially where compost is like a probiotic for the soil. The soil is like a superorganism that like nobody knows very much about, because it's, if you look at an acre of land, there's as much as 2 tons of microbes living in that land. So there's all this life that you can't even see. And it's really important to have that. And, we could go on and on about problems with just applying fertilizer, which is another petroleum-derived product. It helps us feed the world in a lot of ways, but it also takes away its cost. So logistically, what we do and what we offer is, we bring these 64-gallon bins because we also have a mini dump truck that we're able to purchase with a grant from the Solid Waste District. And our driver, Terrigan, who does a commercial route right now, he's a Catholic. He's always volunteering with the Sisters of St. Joe. So he's a good guy. Hopefully, maybe meet him if you signed up with us. But we have 5 part-time employees, my wife and I, and we would go around and we'd find a place with you for where it's going to live, probably out near your dumpster. Roll it in, you can roll it out, and then we would just collect it and dump it into our truck, take it to our compost site, and compost it on a weekly basis. Some folks get worried about smell. It's like, well, if you have a dumpster on site, like whatever you're putting in the compost bin was already going to be in your dumpster anyway. It's not going to smell, and these lids close better than most dumpsters, which usually have big cracks. It's also the middle of winter, so everything's going to be. I love working in the winter because in the summer, we get fruit flies, things get a little riper when you open these things up. In the winter, everything's it's like just working in a refrigerator. Like it's just, that's our particular thing for our job, except when they freeze all the way through. That's a different issue. And we, it's $36 a bin, a pickup. If you had 2 bins on site, since we're already there, it drops down to $29 per bin. And then we just build that on a 4-week cycle, so it's like $144 for 4 pickups. And if you were a little further out at 270, we'd probably have to add extra little charge for time and fuel because we are all the way just north of downtown. So if there's anything else you want to cover, I don't think so, but I'm glad to take any sorts of questions.
I am not sure when it happens stuff, so.
Yeah.
So we typically serve in-house by the time we go through all of the tables, multiple rounds, probably somewhere on good and bad weeks, depending on the weather, between 600 to 900 in-house meals.
Yeah.
I don't know how much I would estimate for people throwing away the food that they're served. What would we is for how many foods we would need for what?
For people giving away, putting stuff that, if it's just food and not compostables, probably 1 bin, maybe 2 bins, because it's not going to be a lot. I mean, everybody's scraping just a little bit off their plate. And these hold, this is a 64-gallon bin. This holds up to 250 pounds of food waste. Like a coffee shop or a small restaurants, we probably pick up about 1 to 2 bins on average for those. It's probably maybe comparable with what they see a week or so.
How do you clean the bin?
How do we clean them? Well, so our truck has a little pump in, and what we actually do is we line them with compostable liners so that they're made by BioBag, and they're BPI certified compostable. And again, we only take BPI certified compostable products, which there's a lot of those out there. Just to make sure it's not actually plastic and it's not going to contaminate our piles. But we line them with those bins so they stay relatively clean, and then we hose them out. We have a little pump on our truck, dump the water into a dump bed when we need to as well. So they stay relatively clean, probably cleaner than your dumpster. Compostable plates are fine. As long as it's BPI certified compostable, if you see that logo, we will take it. And sorry, I forgot what Abe was saying earlier. You're probably going to want to stack them. Otherwise, you can climb in the bin and jump on them and compress them. But if you have 600 people and you're using compostable plates and you don't, then you're probably going to need 4 bins or something. Just stack it and save money. Question.
What is the BPI?
BPI is the Biodegradable Product Institute, and they're just a third party. They're not us. They're not the manufacturer who's making plates that say they're compostable. They're a third party that's independent, that tests the products in a lab and makes sure that they are actually compostable. Just because there's so much junk out there, and we don't want plastic just turning into microplastics and piles.
It's very, the plastic, or like, that the claims are valid.
Yeah.
And I think, so anybody that submits their product obstacle certification, you have to wait a couple months because they literally make orders that they can check for PFAS and to make sure it actually degrades. And
if you're not sure, like you go to their homepage, which I think is, I think it might be bpiworld.org. I don't remember. Yeah, they have right on the front page of it a search bar, and you can search any product and see if it's in their database if they've tested it. So they make it real easy, and their logo stands out really clearly on products too. Oh, no. I mean, we would just pay for the services that we would, it's, how many nights is it? 7 is it total? 6 or 7. Yeah, it depends. So we would just, we usually bill on 4-week cycles, but we might do it just slightly differently but we would bill you for 4 weeks and then just half a cycle after that for 6, but total. It just depends if you're using compostables, maybe more, but, on average, if you're just collecting food waste, and is there much, so there's front of the house and back of the house, back of the house where you're prepping, is there much food waste from back of the house prepping? Yeah, so back. Yeah, I think on average, you're probably going to get away with 1 bin and be okay. If you have an issue, you can contact us. We'll figure it out, stop another bin off for next time. And we have Melody is our community outreach person, and she's glad to, work with folks, talk to staff about, separating on site or logistics and flow. She's very good at that, and she's super knowledgeable about composting as well. So glad to have her talk with y'all.
John, can I add? Polar Fever are 1 or 2 fish fries every year. We have 4 of those, but we serve 800 to 1,000 people, and everything is compostable. We have no capacity for reusables, unfortunately. So our cutlery, our clamshells, our plates, everything is going to the compost. So we need all of that. And I get into the bins and stuff on to find another method. I'm sure.
Yeah, stacking is great. Yeah.
Just to clarify, you say you use 4 in one night?
One night. Yes. Yeah.
So it's rest.
Yeah, we work with Total Organics because our bacteria compost their school lunches every day. So we already had that contract. So that's how we got things started.
So we're not here to poach. But we know Total Organics. So it's
BPI 35?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, whether it's the cups that are clear and see-through that look like plastic but aren't, or plates or cutlery as well, as long as it's BPI certified.
Newark has a really great app.
Yeah, we're moving away from that. Yeah, I have our compost guide of what we accept and don't accept. We did have an app where you could look up what you compost and don't compost. We're actually getting rid of it, but. It's fairly straightforward. If it grows, if it was alive at one time, it goes. We'll take it. If it was manufactured, if it's BPI certified compostable, we'll take it. Otherwise, call us, email us. We'll glad to answer. But
All right, we already have done this shit.
what's it?
Fries.
Yeah, absolutely. We won't take like a big tub of grease. That's another waste stream, different collector, but
Let's get some here. Like I make it out this today. I love to add additional olive oil.
oh no, that's fine. I'm talking about fry from frying from the baskets and just the tub of grease. We can't take that.
Okay, we're out of time. John, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Okay, friends, we are past time, and I apologize about that. What a great conversation. James, did you have anything that you wanted to make note of?
Like that link, Gavin, if you put your phone out there, that's the link for our micro grants. It will also go out by email to all of you, to Josh. In that email, we will have a link to the presentation slides and to the video along the presentation system.
Yes. Sister Cheryl, do you have anything you wanted to say?
Thank you all for coming.
Yes. Thank you, everybody, so much. Let's continue this conversation.
And come up with a show.
Yeah, take a muffin.
I'd like to thank you. I have to say, look out the Archdiocese. Yeah, right.
And I'm posting everything, so you can put it in. 7 months.